Can the Catamounts build momentum in year 2 under head coach Tim Kraft? Western Carolina team preview starts now. All right, now when we look at the Catamounts, this is a team that we know statistically speaking and even record-wise, they struggled in 2024. But Tim Kraft, he's a crafty, yes, that's a pun intended right there. He's a crafty head coach. We've seen him have success, obviously, in the Big South. So I would suspect that we will see improvements, but this is a team that did struggle last year.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there will be some significant improvement this year, but certainly a little bit of a struggle in year 1 for Coach Tim Kraft. 8-22 overall, 4-14 in the league. 3 of those 8 wins against non-Division I opponents. So certainly the positive here is it can't get much worse in terms of building. So I would anticipate a much more successful year 2, and certainly some stuff to build off of as well.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said about that. Now the coaches, they feel that the Catamounts are coming in around 7th for here the 2025 season. But I think if you're looking at even the rewind of last year, I mean, this was a team that just from an offensive efficiency standpoint and even a defensive efficiency standpoint, they just didn't measure up, and that was a struggle. And even when you look at, hey, they were able to shoot great from the free throw line when they got to the free throw line, 3rd in the Southern Conference, but you're also like 350th in three-point percentage, and that's just not going to get it done, especially we know in the Southern Conference, you have to be able to utilize the 3 ball.
100%. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. If you can't shoot the 3, you're going to really struggle in this league. It's an offensive-oriented league. It's a 3-point-oriented league. And, they shot 31% from 3 last year, like you mentioned. It's going to be hard to win a lot of basketball games in the league, shooting 31%. And they only shot 39% from the floor. So that has to improve this year as well if they're going to be able to increase their scoring for sure.
Yeah, and the one thing, though, that we have seen from Tim Kraft over the years is that he is able to build upon at least some success that he might had. And that's why I think even looking at last year, you knew it was going to be somewhat of a rebuild anyway. And then if you can have a little bit of success, can you have some things to build upon? Because, again, they were able to knock down the free throws, and that's obviously a big part of the game. We know that, but you got to be able to get to the line and then be able to utilize that. And so can you build off of just something of that nature? And, their offense efficiency was really poor. Defense a little bit better, so can you also look at opportunities to increase, especially on the defensive side, because you're going to have to make stops in the Southern Conference also.
Absolutely. To your point, 81 points a game they gave up in conference last year. I mean, that's going to be hard to compete. So certainly need to tighten that up. I think they showed moments, and I think Tim Kraft's teams historically are going to have some defensive toughness. So again, I think year 2, there should be an anticipation that there's going to be a significant improvement from that.
Yeah, and when you look at some of the key losses, Bernard Pelot, this guy was a mainstay in the Southern Conference. There's no question. A leading scorer there, 14 points per game. You also lost a key guard, Ice Emery. So you're needing to replace a lot of scoring and backcourt minutes here.
You are.
And, you look at when you have Bernard there as your leading scorer, I mean, that's probably giving you an indication that you might have opportunities of struggling because you didn't have any support from that standpoint. And that's nothing against Bernard at all, but that's a lot to put on his shoulders.
No, it really is. He was a very integral piece during Coach Gray's time there.
Yes.
But was never the focal point of the offense, was a guy that would come in really good off the bench, could knock down some threes. Frankly, I specifically remember a couple big ones he hit against us when I was at Furman over the years that were, either backbreakers or some really concerning ones where they started to build momentum. So he was certainly capable of giving you offensive firepower and some energy. But to your point, as the focal point of your offense, you're probably gonna need a little bit more firepower to be able to consistently win games in the league.
You can even go back to that 2022 season and there in 2023 in Asheville and that overtime win for Furman. Pelot was a key part of the reason why Western Carolina
He was
right there and oh so close to upsetting Furman. And, I remember distinctly thinking, oh, wow, he's somewhat taking over some of these games in that conference tournament.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I remember a couple times at Western Carolina the year after that, we were making a little bit of a run, and he came in and knocked down a couple shots that were big time shots that really kind of took the wind out of our sails in 2024.
Yeah. All right. So now looking at what Tim Kraft has been able to do as far as bringing in some of the newcomers, and especially obviously hitting the transfer portal. I mean, that's something we're going to be talking quite a bit about for every team in the Southern Conference. And also, that's just the way college basketball is, in mid-majors in particular.
Yeah.
It is a turnstile type of operation, and these head coaches have to get used to that. And they're adjusting, and we've seen it. And that's why, even with all of these teams, one of the big things that we're focusing more on is the transfer portal guys versus some of the freshmen. Now, there's some of the teams in the Southern Conference that we will be able to highlight some of the freshmen, but right now it's how fast can you get guys to come in and be productive in your system. All right, so now when you look at, though, who are some of the key guys that Tim Kraft was able to keep there at Western Carolina, you're going to start with Marcus Kell.
Yeah.
That's one of the first names you're going to mention.
No, absolutely. When you look at the Southern Conference overall, and a lot of these rosters that we're going to go through, there are a significant amount of transfers and not a lot of returners. And that kind of is a theme this year.
Yeah.
While there are a lot of transfers at Western, it's a significantly new roster. They are unique in that they bring back two key pieces, one of which obviously that you mentioned is Marcus Kell, but also Cord Stansberry. These are two guys that, frankly, you can build off of and that you can build from, that I would anticipate will take significant steps forward this year to help Coach Tim Kraft.
No doubt. And when you look at Marcus Kell, he's preseason all Southern Conference right now. So could he be a breakout player? He did almost average 12 points per game. So there's no slouch. As much as we were talking about Bernard being the leading scorer, you've got Marcus right there, and especially what he was able to do late. Double figures in the final 12 games, including 29 versus Furman, 31 versus Chattanooga. So I would expect he's going to be the primary scorer there for Tim Kraft.
Absolutely. And he gives them really good size too and some versatility. So, he has the potential to be a real matchup nightmare.
38% from three-point line, too.
Yeah.
Again, he was one of those outliers that were able to shoot higher than the team average.
Yeah. He's kind of a guy that I've looked at as we've gone through these rosters and as we've seen kind of what has been through these previews. I have him as kind of one of my breakout stars in the league this year. There's something about his game that I think he is going to take that next step forward. You mentioned, obviously, he really started to come on towards the end of the year.
That's right.
It's one of those moments that just kind of seemed like it started to click.
Yeah, and isn't that interesting how some of these guys, you might not be able to pinpoint it to like one game.
Right.
And sometimes you can, though. You can pinpoint it to one game. But there's typically, when you have these breakout players, it's like the light bulb goes on and they realize that, you know what? Oh, hell yeah, I can play in this conference and I can take over in this conference. And Marcus might be one of those guys primed for that.
Yeah, I'm putting my money on him as being a breakout guy this year.
Okay, all right. We're putting that down. But you also mentioned Cord Stansberry.
Certainly.
11 points per game last year, 32% from beyond the arc. So can he improve that? He's a volume type of guy, but it's all about efficiency. You've got to be able to, if you can be the combo, if you can be that high volume guy with high efficiency, and I'm not saying you have to be 42% or anything like that, but if you can get where you're climbing right at that 38, 39, can you eclipse 40%? Hey, watch out.
Yeah, if you get to that 40% number, that's where you are going to really demand a really hard closeout. They are going to key on you, and you're going to open up the floor for others, and frankly, potentially open up the floor for yourself to be able to straight line drive it. I think you hit the nail on the head. Efficiency is one of the kind of X factors and keys that I see for this Catamounts team to really take a step forward in year two. They have to be more efficient on both ends of the floor, and some of that, frankly, just comes with having better talent.
we talk about it quite a bit. I mean, you can have the best defensive strategy, the best offensive strategy. You can be a fundamentalist. You can break down X's and O's like nobody's business from a head coaching standpoint, or your coaching staff, a motivator, all of that. But if you don't have the guys that can go out there and make buckets, make plays, make stops, you're going to struggle. And especially, we know how guard heavy the Southern Conference is. So you've got to have those guys, those playmakers. And again, if you can combine that with some front court size, again, that's where you can have a lot of success in this conference.
Especially front court size that can step out and shoot it.
Yes, no doubt.
And so certainly, I'll never forget when I was a young coach, when I was at Chicago State, Tracy Dildy, who'd been a big-time assistant throughout the country, was a Chicago icon and legend. He sat me down, and he looked me in the eyes and said, "Darren, don't let anybody ever tell you, no matter how good of a coach you are, if you don't have dudes,
that's right,
you can forget about it." And this was a guy that had recruited an NBA pro at every previous stop that he'd been at as an assistant. And I think I kind of knew that. But when you hear it from somebody who's gone through it, it just has always stuck with me of like, yeah, you can think you're a wizard out there, but you know what? If you don't have dudes,
that's right,
there's only so much you can do.
Intuitively, we know that. And you can even go back to the movie Hoosiers.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, you're not going to use him as a decoy.
No.
Jimmy's going to take the last shot, right? Because you got to get the ball in the player's hands.
Absolutely.
And that's a big part of it. So can Tim Kraft, can he put together this roster with some talent that can, take over games? Because again, there's going to be breakdowns. There's going to be when all hell breaks loose, do you have a guy that can be stable and take over, make a shot, make a play, make a stop, whatever it is. And then also, again, you've got to have a facilitator. And I'm wondering if CJ Highland, can he develop into that point guard position there for Tim Kraft and take his game to the next level?
Yeah, and I think that's something that kind of going back and looking through last year, that was something that they certainly struggled with. And some of that goes along with the efficiencies. But they had pretty low assist numbers. And frankly, their assist to turnover ratio is not great. And I think that's one thing in the Southern Conference as well, because there are some teams that do really like to play fast and are going to put up a lot of threes. You have to put an emphasis on valuing possessions and valuing the basketball. And so I think they really need to fill that void in the backcourt where they've got somebody that can be a reliable distributor that can take care of the basketball and can basically serve table. Because when you've got guys like Kel, you're going to have opportunities to set guys up.
Yes.
But you've got to have somebody back there that can serve table and can certainly value the basketball to be able to get as many possessions as you can.
That's right. All right. So looking at some of the key pieces coming in for Tim Kraft, going to the transfer portal. Well, he didn't go too far. ECU and Gardner-Webb, former player, and that's Julian Samaro from the Bronx, proven scorer. I mean, he did score almost 13 points per game in 2023 there for Gardner-Webb. So, again, this is a guy that can score. He's from the Bronx, just one of those tough type of players. And that's the epitome of what you see from players from the Bronx.
No, certainly. I mean, you get that kind of New York attitude, right?
Yes.
And historically, New York has always had some very good point guards. I don't know exactly what it is, but just – there have been a lot of good playmakers that have come out of New York City. There's been a lot of great players overall, but they are historically kind of known for their point guards.
You can go down the list. I mean, the Kenny Andersons, now I'm going way back, obviously, but also even when I was at Clemson, our team, 1989, you had Marion Cash from the Bronx. Money. I mean, this guy was the epitome of a Bronx type of player. And I see some similarities in Julian in terms of, again, it's almost prototypical that these guys are just built and they play a certain way.
Yeah, and there's a certain level, and we're generalizing certainly, but there's a certain level of toughness that I feel like not only from big cities, but also from a New York City, there's a certain level of toughness that those guys typically play with because you have to. And I think having that kind of be the head of your snake can be a really, really contagious thing. For their roster. And so I agree with you. I think that's a really big piece coming in. Can he kind of be a toughness guy, both offensively, but also really defensively, set the tone.
That's right. And so I'm also interested, Tijan Dumasi from Southern, He's a playmaker,
Mm-hmm.
veteran type of guy. Now, he's not explosive in terms of he's putting up all these points at 9 points per game, just almost 4 rebounds per game. But I think this is just another leadership type of guy that you need, especially when you're trying to meld all of these newcomers together.
Certainly, he's a graduate transfer, so he's obviously played for a significant amount of games. He's also got good size at the guard position, so I think he can probably play both guard spots. He's a guy that over his career at Southern averaged 5 assists a game. And kind of to your point, didn't necessarily excel in anything statistically, but was really good at a lot of things. And so I look at him as a guy that you can kind of plug and play. You can feel comfortable and confident that he is going to give you a little bit of everything and kind of be a guy out there that is a calming force on the floor.
That's my point. Yeah. Isn't there something to be said about these guys that, and I don't want to say a Swiss Army knife that can do, so many different things, but I think it's more so that they have the ability to keep everybody even keeled.
Absolutely.
Because of their experience and never get too high, never get too low.
You absolutely need those on your roster.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be guys that are going to be hotheads. There are going to be guys that are really high energy guys. And some guys don't feed off that. Some guys do. But when you can have that steady, calm, cool, collected attitude and demeanor on the floor, it really sets the tone. And I think a positive for him, although we say, he didn't necessarily excel at one thing, he's a guy that averaged enough of everything that he's clearly capable of going out and having a night where he gets 8 or 9 assists, where he scores 15, where he gets 7 or 8 rebounds.
That's right.
And so I think this is an underrated piece to their roster that if some other things can click where guys excel at a certain skill, he is a really integral piece to this roster.
That's why I don't want to disparage when we talk about a guy that can do so many things, but not excel in one particular category or statistical category out there that we can measure, because there's other things that you can't measure, like we were talking about, the leadership and all of that. But there's something to be said about, I know we look at quarterbacks, he's a game manager. Well, that's not always a negative.
No.
And right here, it's not always a negative that you can be a guy that can do so many different things. So I am anxious to see how he responds into Tim Kraft's system. Then you also have Justin Johnson, athletic wing there from Arkansas State. And that's what I'm also interested in. How can you take advantage of an athletic guy like this that can create his own shot?
Certainly, because I think that's another thing that, as we've talked about last year, I think they lacked some athleticism overall as well.
Yes.
The Southern Conference is typically a pretty athletic league. So I do think having that wing that can have some explosiveness comes from a winning program. I mean, Arkansas State obviously has had some success in the last couple of years.
That's right.
And so he has seen winning. He's seen what a winning culture is like. And so I would anticipate he will bring some of that from Arkansas State. But to your point, I'm excited to see how he can hopefully open the floor up for others with his ability to use that athleticism on the wing and not only create for himself, but create opportunities for others, as he hopefully can draw defenses in with his penetration.
Okay, we talked about front court size. Abdoulaye Kaba, 7-footer, transfer coming in from Denver, led Denver with 21 blocks in 16 games, a rim protector, and this is something that you don't see this type of size consistently in the Southern Conference. So this will be an interesting piece, how he's going to be utilized by Tim Kraft.
It certainly will. I think this is true of a lot of mid-major basketball. A lot of times when you get that level of size at this level, there's not a whole lot of middle ground. It usually goes really well, or all due respect, there's a reason why this guy's not in a high major program making a significant contribution. But I think it's important to be able to take a chance on somebody with this size, because if you can get rim protection out of him, and here's the thing, like, you don't need him to go out and necessarily be a double guy.
No.
Right? But if you can
that's
change,
a bonus, but yes,
certainly.
you're right.
But if you can change shots at the rim,
Yes,
and you can affect defensive and offensive rebounding, and frankly, potentially pull a big defender either away from the rim or provide some rim protection on the offensive end and make guards' lives easier with some lobs and some action going towards the basket, you're going to get your value out of a guy that brings that size.
no doubt about it. And when you look at some of the freshmen coming in, a name that I looked at pretty quickly is Talon Petway, 3-star recruit. I think, it can be a challenge breaking into a lineup.
It can.
Especially as a freshman with obviously, we know with the transfer portals, the veteran guys coming in. But I think there's something that with Tim Craft, we've seen him be able to pull some diamonds, out of the rough, so to speak, and develop some guys. So that'll be interesting to see what he's able to do.
It will. And kind of, what you hint at is college basketball has gotten significantly older. Now, this being the first year without the COVID year, I'll be curious to see if that starts to transition at all. But it has become increasingly difficult for freshmen to crack lineups just because teams are getting so much older and playing so much older through the portal. But he is a guy that I anticipate, even from just seeing him play a little bit, that I anticipate him potentially being able to crack the lineup and make some contributions as a freshman.
No doubt. All right. So when you look at Coach Tim Craft, we know has a disciplined type of offense. Yep. He's all about valuing shooters. So I'm thinking, and we talked about it previously, that year 2, I would highly anticipate there's going to be improvement here in year 2, because I think there's going to be better execution on the offensive side. Now, to be able to do that, you have to improve your field goal percentage. You have to improve your 3-point percentage, where they were bottom 30 nationally. So you have to be able to do that. But then on the defensive side, can you force some turnovers? Can you get in some opportunities of getting out in transition? Because we know, good defense can lead to transition offense. Certainly. And that's where you can improve quickly the opportunity of increasing your field goal percentage, because you're going to get easier looks.
Absolutely. I mean, Tim Craft has got a proven track record. He's a guy that won 15-plus games 8 times at Gardner-Webb, and has won 20 a couple times as well. Big jump from year 1 to year 2 at Gardner-Webb. I agree. I think that his pedigree, his leadership, he's known as being a really calm leader. And so I anticipate a significant jump here in year 2. And again, as we talk about all the time, it's just on paper, but there is a noticeable increase in talent level to this roster, and in what also appears to be more diversity in terms of positionally, and some guys that I think you can plug and play at different positions.
That's right. And also remember too, I mean, these players are understanding Tim Craft's system a little bit better. When I'm talking about Marcus Kell and Cord Stansberry, that they have that opportunity now to feel a little bit more comfortable. And then, can you have the addition of Samaro and Dumasi? Can they bring some immediate production? And again, on paper, it looks like they can, and I think that's going to be a big part of it. But again, you go back to Marcus Kell. Can he perform what we think he can? Again, preseason also con. And now, can you have a revamped backcourt? Can that fix some of the shooting percentages that we've talked about? And if that can happen, then I think there's an opportunity. Western Carolina, they might not be able to get to that top echelon in the Southern Conference, but they can be fighting there in the middle of the pack and can be a spoiler.
Certainly. I think, to your point, obviously the transfers are going to have to be able to come in and contribute. But one of the biggest X factors here I see is, can Marcus Kell and Cord Stansberry take that next step?
Yeah.
Can they kind of be part of the core that really kind of helps bridge Coach Tim Craft's year 1 to year 2 and building that culture and building that program? I just, there's something that I feel, I can't really point a finger to it, but I think that this is going to be a significantly improved group. And like you said, I think that this team can certainly create problems
Yes.
for
No
guys.
doubt.
I agree that, middle of the pack is probably,
All right, so what's their floor?
I think 8th is their floor. I think there's enough talent there that they are not going to they're not going to have some of the same issues that they did last year.
I agree. I think they're going to be more consistent.
I do.
That's what
too.
I would just based on the additions they got from the transfer portal, but also I do think that both Stansberry and Kell are going to improve from last year.
I agree. And I look at their ceiling as a 6 in maybe a crazy circumstance. If
Can
some
they get to
injuries
a 4 or a
happen, can they
5?
get to a 5? I don't think they can necessarily get to a 4, but I think if everything were to go right and some things were to go sideways at some other programs, you could convince me of 5th, but I think their window really is pretty solidly that 6-7 range, but will be significantly more competitive and will win some games that they maybe are not predicted to win.
Yes, because you know how it is in a college basketball season. There's going to be nights where one of the top tier teams, they come out and they're playing their C+ game.
Yep.
And Western Carolina will be able to beat somebody that comes out and plays a C+ game. There's no doubt. Where maybe last year they weren't able to do that. And that's why I do think this team can do that. I would also agree with you. I think 5th is probably the ceiling right now. But now if Marcus Kell, if he comes out and all of a sudden he plays at a level of being in the conversation for SoCon Player of the Year, now that might change things because that could be 1 or 2 games that put you, over that hump there to get to that top 4 seed there in the Southern Conference. But I think 5th is a good landing spot for them as far as their ceiling.
Yeah, and I think one thing you bring up is Kell, is that if he can be that guy that can go out on multiple occasions and have a 25, 30-point night, now you start talking about, okay, you're certainly going to win more of those games that you weren't necessarily projected to, and the scenario where somebody comes out and plays a C+ game and he goes off for 25, 30. Those are the scenarios where you can start to kind of outplay maybe where your prediction is.
Yeah, and I could see Western Carolina being one of those teams, goes through the regular season, maybe finish in the middle of the pack, and then come conference tournament time, they might be a team that you don't want to see in the tournament because they can – I think they're going to have an opportunity of being more efficient on the offense and defensive side, and they could be a spoiler.
No, certainly.
There you go. All right, that is Western Carolina team preview. And remember, all you have to do is hit that subscribe or follow button, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, including the iHeartRadio app. Until next time, may all your jumpers hit nothing but the bottom of the net.